Oh yeah!
Hello and welcome to this edition of Fish Stripes Live. We are here to preview the series coming up versus the Tampa Bay Rays and your Miami Marlins. I am the host, Daniel, and joining us today we have the usual suspects, Isaac Azut, Eli Sussman, Adam Agbani, somewhere around there. And joining us today is our special guest, Mr. Ron Cox. Ron, it is great to have you on here on our stream tonight.
It's a pleasure to be here. I watch you all from time to time, and I think you're pretty entertaining. I love the intro, by the way. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, we might be due for an update because longtime viewers will know that this is the first show I'm doing from a new computer that I replaced after 9 years. So hopefully that improves the production quality a little bit. It makes my face look a little bit more normal on here. So we might tweak the intro one more time, but I'm glad that we arrived at a spot that's entertaining for people.
Yeah, and I wanted to start things off and talk about this series before now with Tampa Bay, the one with the Dodgers, their 4-game set. The Marlins did fall to the Dodgers, losing 3 out of the 4. But the one win was probably the most, one of the most special performances in all of baseball this season with Sandy Alcantara's just complete game. Adding on to his Cy Young resume. I want to go to our guest, Ron. What are your thoughts on just Sandy versus the Dodgers and just overall and him being now the front runner for the Cy Young Award?
Such a spectacular season, and this is the one really consistent joy of being a Marlins fan this year, because I always make it a point, I'm sure a lot of other people do, to either gather around the television or try to make it to the ballpark to see a Sandy start. I happen to be a 20-game season ticket holder, and my ticket package didn't coincide with the start, but I watched every moment of it, and it was just delicious. It was just wonderful.
Yeah, we'll go to Isaac. What did you see from Sandy in terms of just what he was throwing there, going 9 innings against the Dodgers? Not a lot of teams can do that. They have the best offense in baseball. Almost every player, or maybe every player, is an all-star, former all-star. What did you see in terms of just the Sandy's mechanics?
That was one of the more vintage Sandy concert performances. His pitch count was so manageable the entire game. It was never a thought that he wouldn't go out for the 9th inning, which, sometimes we're a little worried, is Donnie going to pull him? But there was no doubt in anyone's mind he was going to pitch the 9th inning. I didn't even have to check the dugout or the bullpen. It was going to be him. He had a little trouble. He had some bad defense behind him in that 9th inning. Lewin Diaz, of all people, sort of misplayed a ball that made him throw more pitches than he had to. But overall, he pitched obviously sensational. He's the best pitcher in the world right now. Him and Jacob deGrom, we got to put them at the top together. And just overall series, I was very encouraged. They were competitive in 3 of the 4. That one blow up with Edward Cabrera on the mound on Sunday, but 2 of the 4 were extra innings, and they lost by just 1 yesterday. So you got to be encouraged by sort of being competitive with the best team in baseball.
Yeah, and we'll go to Eli. Now Sandy has, I believe that was his 4th complete game, most in every team now in baseball, and just how much did that further cement himself as the NL Cy Young?
We have to say that stat again more clearly. He has more complete games this season than any other entire team does. There's no other team with more than 3 as a whole, and he individually has 4. It's just astonishing. It is, as we've been saying all year, it's just a man out of time. It is somebody pitching like starting pitchers used to pitch 2 decades ago or more, when they were consistently given that long leash. to work deep into games. I mean, one thing to acknowledge that we talked about a lot heading into the start is that this was some sort of, he was looking for revenge against a Dodgers team that not only beat him up the previous start when they faced him, but also the previous year. His history against the Dodgers was just awful in his previous experience. And he avenged himself in this one outing, facing a lot of the same hitters that he faced in the previous matchup between them. So it's all about, statistically, it's just hard to argue that there's been a more impactful pitcher, more outstanding pitcher who combines effectiveness and volume and consistency. The fact that his absolute worst start is still, 4-ish innings. Like there just have not been any true, awful performances from him. And the vast majority of them, if you just look at the median, the vast majority of his performances are great every single time out. And it just speaks to his season that he's had, that this complete game wasn't even near the top of the list of best games that he's pitched this year, because there have been so many. It's such a crowded leaderboard at the top when trying to split hairs between when he's been at his best. He so reliably is near his best start after start after start. It's been wonderful. And as this happens, around the league, it just seems that any other potential challenger that he had for the Cy Young, they've all just one by one, their cases are starting to fall apart just a little bit more, where it's just difficult with the Tony Gonsolin injury and the Carlos Rodon struggle last night. It's just hard to make the case for anybody passionately aside from Sandy, and for him to just still be pitching at this high level this late into the year. It's going to be fun. The atmosphere, I can't wait for the last few Sandy Beaches home starts that we're going to have, because as people smell, that coronation coming, I think that's going to make them excited regardless if there's anything at stake for the team itself.
Yeah. And on the opposite side, just of this series, we had that bright spot of Sandy, but as you can see right there in the bottom, Marlins did lose 3 out of the 4. It was just, we really had that Sandy start, but then everything else really just almost typical Marlins, just typical of the season so far. Sandy gives you great innings, gives you the win, and then offense can't really get it going in the other sides of those games. And I wanted to go back and talk about that most recent game on Sunday and talk a little bit about Edward Cabrera. I'm really struggling against the Dodgers. 5 2/3 innings, 5 hits, 6 earned runs, 5 strikeouts, 3 walks. I'll give it to anyone who wants to answer. Just what were your guys' thoughts on Edward Cabrera getting hit, almost thrashed by the Dodgers?
No. I need to stop you there, because I don't think you were at that. Was it the Spaces conversation that we did either with Kevin or with Alex right after the outing? I think the final line was deceiving, and that all things considered, it wasn't that bad. It was different from him. He relied a lot on his curveball in that outing. And I think I actually read in the news, maybe in the newsletter that went out today from Paige Leckie at MLB.com, about how they knew early on that Edwards' changeup was just not there for whatever reason. And so they had to do something differently, something much different than usual in order to get hitters out. And they did the best that they can, just relying really heavily on his breaking balls. So there was some mixed results. No doubt. And by his standards, the fact that he had an entire scoreless August going heading into that outing, it's a bit of a letdown. All things considered, it's not a big worry. Half of the runs that scored against him were the inherited runs that Tommy Nance led in. That was a suspect choice to go to him in that important situation. And I'm still incredibly encouraged by what he's done, and still think that there are much better starts ahead for him.
I actually sent out a tweet in the 3rd inning of the Cabrera start, which basically went something like this. I'm encouraged despite the struggles, because if you compare Cabrera this year with last year, he would have probably been out of the game in the 1st inning last year. This year, he was able to make adjustments, which Eli has spoken to, and I thought those adjustments were impressive. They allowed him to extend himself, and he almost got out of that 5th inning. And had it not been for Tommy Nance, he would have his stat line would have looked much better. So I actually thought it was encouraging, because he didn't have his best stuff. He was able to make adjustments. He was able to rely a bit more on the curveball. And I think that's for the good. It shows you the maturity of Edward Cabrera against such a high-powered offense.
Yeah, and then just to get in quickly on Eddie, his secondary pitch packages have made have been significantly upgraded since 2021 and the pandemic overall, which has really made him into potentially a 3 or 4 starter, which before he was likely a fringe / reliever. Eddie is someone who I believe, with his fastball, changeup, curveball, or fastball slider changeup combo, with adding his fourth pitch and trying to get his feet wet and using it, especially at an early age, right now I don't have an issue with it at all, especially trying to establish that and trying to get acquainted with it. I think the more you can throw early on, the more you can have command of, and the more you have control of your arsenal. I think it's going to be going forward, and the more pitches you can throw for strikes, the better. And especially with the kind of spin that he can induce on his pitches, it's going to be something going forward that I'm really going to like watching from Edward Cabrera. A lot of stuff you can see that I'm going to like going forward. And, even if he had trouble commanding his curveball this start, I still think he should just continue to try to throw it, because it can only help him as he continues to learn, and he's still young with a fourth pitch. And I think, 3 pitches is good, but if you can have a fourth one with this kind of stuff that he has in the movements, it's just going to be making him a much better pitcher than he already is. So.
Yeah, well, to me, I just want to ask, Eli or Daniel or Alex, even just last year there was an issue where he was overthrowing the changeup, and last night or on Sunday he was overthrowing the curveball a lot, especially in that 5th inning where he couldn't quite finish it. To get a pitch over for a strike, he was not using that incredible fastball. He was using the curveball. Is that pitch calling from Stallings and Mel, or is that him saying, no, I'm more comfortable going with the off speed? Because this is like the second year in a row where he struggles when he goes off speed heavy.
Yeah, well, then actually, I'm fascinated by it, because you look it up and there is really no other starter that has been, as you said, used less of his fastball over the last couple of years than Edward has. So it's not even tied to a particular catcher. And I don't even think it's tied to this major league coaching staff either. I mean, from the best of my memory, he was doing that also in the upper minors as well before getting called up even last year, where he was going majority off-speed pitches. It's not just majority, but I think since he's been in the majors, it's something like 32% fastballs. Like more than 2/3 of his pitches are secondary stuff. It's really just extremely unusual for a starting pitcher. The way I try to rationalize it is that he throws his changeup so hard that it's a lot like a fastball at times. I mean, in terms of velocity, it's not all that different from the average fastball velo that other pitchers throw. It's still very unusual. And last year, I thought it was the easy issue to point at when you're trying to account for why is he struggling so much as he was when he got called up last year. I thought, well, maybe the pitch mix is part of the problem. And even this year, as you said, it's the same fact that he's just not using the fastball very often. And yet, for the most part, it has been working this year. So it's something I don't really have a great answer to. It's something that I'm fascinated in finding out, but it seems to definitely be his preference, that this seems to be coming from him. This is something that's been consistent with him, no matter who he's thrown to, no matter who he's with. And more often than not, it's been effective. But I'm curious to see whether it actually holds true throughout his career, because nobody else is doing it to this extent and actually sticking as a starting pitcher.
And with
it's
much of a difference, with the changeup and fastball velocity, the changeup's at 94, 93, and his fastball is at 95, 96. So it's not that big gap that you'd like between your fastball, sinker, and your changeup. So I think that's something to monitor, because he was throwing 99, 98, if I'm not mistaken, in AAA, and last year I remember his fastball being a little bit faster. Yeah. I think this year I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah, and Edwards, if you look at his
remember going back to spring training, this must have been in 2020 in spring training, when in his first exhibition appearance in the Grapefruit League, he was consistently over 100.
Right.
But maybe this is just part of the process of being able to command the pitch better if you dial it down a little bit, and that perhaps he found that throwing as hard as he could wasn't effective for him, and being able to actually locate that pitch for strikes. You're right, though, that what we've seen in terms of the velo in the majors this year, it hasn't been quite what it was with him as a prospect.
Yeah, and the last topic I really want to discuss before we move on from the Dodgers is that final game on Monday with Pablo Lopez as a starting pitcher, and I talk about Eddie, but Pablo had a really great start there. 6 innings, 5 hits, 2 earned runs, 6 strikeouts, 3 walks. His best performance, would you guys say, at home since the All-Star break? You would say?
That's something that you noticed that I hadn't noticed, that he had been struggling at home recently.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's much to put to that for whatever reason. Yeah, the great starts that we remember recently were ones that were on the road, and for whatever, I don't put too much stock into that, but it was just, to speak about it plainly, it was a good outing, and only 2 runs to Will Smith on, I think that is what was in this picture right here. I think that was his home run to like dead center field. So that was pretty impressive. With Pablo, no, it's fine. He's fine. I think people have overreacted in general to the fact that he hasn't been super effective since the trade deadline, and having regrets that they didn't move him. And you know where I stood on that, where I'm holding true to the conviction that the team is better off with him than without him moving forward. So yeah, I'm not going to microanalyze every single start from him. This one was, but it was refreshing, of course, to see that he did solidly in this outing against a lineup that wasn't at totally full strength, to be fair, because they said Mookie Betts got an off day, and there were a couple other guys in there that the usuals, it wasn't quite as deep of a lineup.
Yeah,
and
they put in Hansar Beto, Joey Gallo. Just the lineup, Gavin Luck was pinch hitting, so they were not really, I mentioned full strength. They're top guys out there. And that also brings me, you mentioned Mookie Betts. I think might as well just discuss just how, I would say it's just insane, just video game like. He had 4 home runs in just 3 games. He even sat out, they sat him in the final game, and then he still won, I believe, MVP for our series predictions. Just, is this more Mookie is just that good, or are the Marlins just, they know how to pitch against guys like that?
I mean, I think Mookie being a American League MVP and a former almost 11 WAR player is no accident. And if there's anyone who's going to go off in any game, it's probably going to be a guy like Mookie Betts. So, the Marlins should not be kicking themselves over arguably this.
Oh, we lost him. Well, I'll finish it because I think he was going in this direction. I think besides Shohei Ohtani, he's the best player in baseball, Mookie Betts. You can make the argument that he is, no one plays a better right field or outfield than I've seen. I was able to cover Friday night's game, and wow, does he play a public field? And every single at bat is competitive. Doesn't waste any bat, doesn't strike out. He's the best. He's one of the best players. So top 3 at least.
Yeah. Let me go to Ron. Again, about Mookie Betts. Just what did you see from him and his performance? Just having just a lights out series against the Marlins.
He's just such an electric player. He's one of my favorite players to watch when he's not playing the Marlins, especially because he was just not missing. Any mistake he would take advantage of. He's clearly in the zone this past week, not just against the Fish. He had a few good games, prior to the series. But I agree with Isaac. I think he's certainly one of the premier athletes. He's a joy to watch both on defense and offense. He just knows what he's doing. He's a very intelligent player, and there's nothing that he really doesn't do well on the baseball field.
Yeah, and with that, is there anything? I think Adam, you wanted to mention something before you had connection issues.
Yeah, no, it was just kind of brief. Like we were talking about how with Mookie going off, I just, if anyone's going to go off in Major League Baseball the way that they do, it's Mookie Betts is not going to be on that list just because, he's a former National or American League MVP, arguably the top 5 player in baseball, if not probably a little bit higher. This is not something that they should be kicking themselves over. And if he's going to go off, it's going to be Mookie Betts. It's no big deal. It's not something that we're really looking forward to, and there's not a whole lot we can be looking forward to in this year. So, if we see something like that happen, it's whatever. But Mookie Betts, he's honestly he's made a really, really good case and ascension for the National League MVP. I think it's honestly Paul Goldschmidt's at this point, just because he's a Triple Crown threat. But Mookie Betts is definitely going to finish in the top 5, and he's easily, arguably, the best right fielder in baseball.
And he homered off the side. Yeah, he homered off the side. The 10th home run allowed by Sandy this year was by Mookie Betts, so that was just a fair matchup.
There you go.
And Sandy, how does he respond? Makes out Mookie Betts twice. What a fascinating picture.
what else did you guys see? Really quick before we move on, just offensively from the Marlins. Was there anyone that really stood out to you guys? Someone that maybe just had a really good series or something? I know Payne Burdick had a home run. Gigi Leday had a double, but was there anyone in the long run of that series which maybe stuck out to you guys offensively?
No. Not very good. On the top of my head, I'm trying to think. One of you guys, if anybody deserves a mention, go ahead.
I mean, that pretty much says it all. If you can't really think of it in the 4-game series, you can't think of anyone offensively. Then I think
I'm sort of left to think who is an interesting player that I'm just kind of focused on watching. That's kind of how I put it. But I think JJ Bleday would be that player for me because I'm just intrigued by the player as all this have been, trying to figure out, okay, is this guy going to be an average major league player? He's going to be a little bit better than average. He seems unlikely to be a superstar, but I think he could be a solid contributor. And the thing that's encouraging about him, I mean, this was the subject of, I think, a recent Herald article, is he's got a very good eye at the plate. He lays off the breaking ball that other players, might swing and miss, even veterans like Jorge Soler, Abisail Garcia, to name a couple, might swing and miss the same pitch. That's encouraging. That shows a level of maturity already, which is sort of hard to teach at a young age. You either sort of have it or you don't. But the thing that is discouraging at this point is he has a bit of a long swing, and Mattingly referred to this also. So he's not able to maximize the contact or even get to balls that you think he should be hitting.
Yeah, we mentioned this last night. We were talking about it on Twitter, Ron. Everybody said, I know there were differing opinions on that he had in the 10th inning with the walk, which, I mean, he's taking pitches that are literally inches off the plate for balls, walking the bases loaded with the winning run puts the winning run at second base. That's quality, man. That's a quality plate appearance. That's a quality at bat. And you're right. What he needs to do is be able to hit, and I think Isaac brought this up, and he's right. He needs to be able to hit in a 3-1 count when he gets a fastball at 95 down the middle. He needs to be able to hit it. So that's what he needs to work on. Clean up the swing a little bit. He did it in the minors. Now he needs to do it in the majors, and he just needs to step up. So those who believe in him will continue to believe in him, and those who don't will continue to say that he can't hit. But that's our split here amongst Marlins fans. So
that's the Twitter dynamic, right? You're on one extreme or the other extreme.
Exactly, 100%. But yeah, it's quality at bats is what I see from him. Like you said, that are great. So.
And that's exactly what Donnie alluded to. When I was covering on Friday with Daniel, Barry Jackson was able to ask him, it's not a huge sample size, but enough. Give me your positive, give me your negatives. The positives were, gets on base, is able to lay off pitches that are, down in the zone. But the tough is just hitting the ball in the net so many times, fouling off so many balls that, you think should get crushed. And that's like a theme with a lot of these young Marlins players. I mentioned that last night in the Twitter Spaces. A lot of these players, I think it was Jesus Sanchez that was really struggling to hit balls that were very hittable. Him, Lewin, now Bleday, Burdick as well to an extent. So it seems to be a theme with these young minor leaguers that get called up.
Let me go to the other minor leaguer really quick while we have Alex here and talk about Payne Burdick. What do you see from Burdick from this series, Alex, and maybe overall his stint as a major leaguer? Is as going as well as you thought?
For me, about what I expected. I mean, honestly, another guy that looks at some pitches. I mean, I think Bleday is a little bit ahead of him in terms of plate discipline. But Burdick is a big physical guy. He's going to be swinging at, more quality, or now that he's facing more quality stuff, he's going to be swinging at pitches out of the zone. Commits a little too early at times for him, especially against big league breaking stuff, which is expected for a guy that's making a jump up to big league baseball. But no, overall, yeah, a guy that usually swings at quality stuff. Yes, he can get caught and look foolish at times, especially against sliders. That was what I think his main difficulty is facing sliders, especially ones that are diving down in the dirt. That's a pitch that has been a struggle for him and has continued to be in the majors. But overall, I think he's done well. He's really, really impressed me with his defense in center field. This is a guy that learned that position literally last year, and he's been really good at it. So I think his defense is definitely going well. Definitely still more of a corner guy for me, but he's become a lot better in center field. He's been challenged to do it. So I love Burdick, man. Like I said, big physical guy. Like you're not going to tell a guy like that to stop being physical because you're taking his best strength away. So, it does need to improve, especially in terms of facing quality breaking stuff, which has been his crux, but I think he's been fine.
Right. And I want to mention here, because this is going to be our last show before the September call-ups are made or the rosters expands later this week. And I want to mention that it was in my mind that maybe today they would bring back Avisail Garcia from his rehab assignment and put him on the active roster at the expense of either Burdick or Gerard Encarnacion or another young outfielder. And now it seems pretty apparent at this point that they're simply going to wait 2 days until rosters expands and activate him without necessarily sending down anybody else as a corresponding move. I don't know. I didn't think of that originally. That seems to be like the easiest way not to step on anybody's toes and then to embarrass anybody at that particular time. And so for whether it's Burdick or I don't know if all these guys are going to continue to coexist on the active roster down the stretch, but at least it leaves the door open for them at this very moment. That's something I guess we've talked about a little bit on the spaces, and it's not like all that exciting of a time of year considering it's only 2 extra roster spots. But that's just something that came to my mind, is that it seems that they're not in any hurry to send down one of these young outfielders. I mean, we saw that, of course, in the decision to cut ties with Aguilar because he was part of that same difficult mix of playing time. But we'll see exactly how their playing time is impacted in a couple of days, because Avi is really on the verge of returning, even though it seems like they're pushing it off, kicking that can down the road a couple of days until they have those extra roster spots.
Yeah.
But I think we should take this moment while we have Ron on, and we do have Alex on as well, voice only, is trying to get some reaction to this very big news recently about the MLB Players Association, like taking a direct stand in advocating for minor leaguers who aren't ordinarily, for the guys that are not on the 40-man roster, they just don't have much protection whatsoever, much control over their futures as well. And it's been a very slow process in terms of getting better treatment for minor leaguers. And now this is a pleasant surprise to see, at least from my perspective, to see the MLB Players Association is like taking this step to advocate for them, to bring in people from advocates for minor leaguers to like absorb that advocacy group within them in order to better serve the minor leaguers. What does this mean, Ron? Where exactly does this go from here? Because this is exciting, but I think we're still a little unclear about exactly what the impact is going to be from all this.
This is historic. This is something I never thought I would get to see in my lifetime, because I've long been an advocate for minor league unionization, which is pretty much the only step that minor league players can take that has a chance to increase their wages to livable wages as opposed to poverty level wages. And I credit minor league advocates for actually laying the groundwork here. They're the equivalent of Marvin Miller to the extent that you have to have a foundation. You have to have a series of very atomized professionals who see the need of coming together and working as a collective to try to better their collective situation, which is very difficult in the minors. Because in the minor leagues, each individual athlete has to think they're good enough to make it. We're going to be the exception. But we know the vast majority are never going to make it. This is the extent of their professional careers. Despite that, we're still talking about the 5% of the best baseball players in the world whose wages have stuck at poverty level throughout decades and decades and decades, regardless of the circumstances. So during the renaissance of the minor leagues in the 1990s, when minor league franchises and franchise owners were raking in huge profits, minor league baseball players' wages stayed exactly the same. But I think what's happened with the Players Association at the big league level has been another huge title shift. And I think what's triggered this is prior to the last collective bargaining agreement and those negotiations, the Players Association recognized that they made far too many concessions that sacrificed the interest of minor leaguers that came back to bite the big leaguers. Because, major leaguers were willing to give up concessions to limit the pay of of first-year players who were drafted to cap bonuses. They were willing to basically put other constraints on the earning power of the minor leaguers in various ways, and as if this is simply a bargaining chip they can throw away. And what did the big league owners do? They took advantage of this structure in a big-time way. The big league owners said, look, we've got this cheap minor league to major league pipeline, and we can use it to our advantage. Over half the players are caught up in that pipeline for the first 3 to 4 years of their career, back and forth between the minors and the majors. We can keep their salaries very low. They don't have any bargaining power at all during this time period. Their wages are restricted from the minors to the majors, and the owners took advantage of that to keep players' salaries lower in general as the owners were making more profits. So the players thought, okay, it's better to actually see that we are collectively united and we can fight for each other. And since we're bargaining on behalf of minor leaguers anyway, and we're not even acknowledging it, this is a way to get them at the table to address their interest and to try to coexist with the other big leaguers. Of course, that's the tricky part, because you've got a union that's massive and you already have divisions among the richer players and the players in the first few years of their careers. You potentially have the minor leaguers if this goes to plan and if they can unionize as part of this collectivity. So you're going to have a lot of interest to juggle. But I think it's worth it because there's really no other option for the minor leaguers to try to do better for themselves.
Yeah, and just to get in here, Ron would know this, him being a politics professor at FIU. I remember, or was it FAU or FIU? FIU, yeah. So this is the 100-year anniversary of Major League Baseball's antitrust exemption from the Sherman Act, meaning that Major League Baseball has been allowed to compete in anti-competitive, or allowed to engage, I should say, in anti-competitive activities for the past 100 years in regard to their minor league baseball players and how they are receiving compensation. And the reason for that is because there is, like, they believe that the Major League Baseball business does not institute interstate commerce, and especially for minor leaguers, which is the biggest like cap of all time, especially with the commercialization of the game and how we've seen it to this point. So it's just like, with this kind of like dichotomy with Major League Baseball players making the kind of money that they do, with the minor leaguers receiving the scant wages that they do, and Ron mentioned that this is still the 5% most elite baseball players on the planet. It's something that is really going to go forward. And especially when we see like a lot of these guys receiving signing bonuses, this is all they get. That is their money that they create, that they make as professional baseball players, and that is all they have to show for themselves if they don't make the major leagues. So, and even then, it's making $500,000 a year for just a few years, and after that, a lot of these guys are left without college degrees and have to go to school. It's kind of like a brain, I should say, it's not really that, I should take back, but it's fantastic for Major League Baseball and going forward. And honestly, if there's ever going to be a unanimous vote amongst the minor leaguers brought by this card by Tony Clark that he's putting out, this is going to be it. Like they said, at least 30%. I ain't buying that it's going to be only 30%. It's going to be an overwhelming majority of minor league players that are going to be accepting or going to be voting for this, because what other reason would there be for them not to? Because this purely and only benefits minor league baseball players and their potential compensation. So this is a huge dub for the minor league baseball players and a huge momentum going forward in terms of getting equitable compensation for minor league baseball players and just athletes who are seen to be young before they actually take the professional, before they're seen in the big show spotlight. This goes for amateur athletes who are considered amateur, like college players and minor league players who have been mistreated all these years. And finally, we're going to get some retribution for them. So that's what I want to mention.
And I think with that is a perfect time. We're going to go into a break and give you a little snippet of Noah's interview with Marlins reliever Jake Fishman. So watch that. And then after that break, we'll give you the preview for the Marlins and Rays series and our predictions. Oh, you're muted, Eli.
One of the few Jewish baseball players that are active in the majors right now. Noah was extremely excited to talk about him. So that full interview is up on our podcast feed. It's on our YouTube account. Here's 1 minute of it with Fishman talking about his pitch mix, his strategy, his strengths, and his weaknesses on the mound.
To me, my strengths are definitely being able to get a lot of ground balls with my sinker, and I have a new slider this year, so it's definitely been a process working through how that plays and what that's good for. But I feel like it's really helped me against righties. So, and that kind of plays into what my weakness is against righties. Oftentimes they'll be hanging out over the plate, ready for that sinker. So having the slider able to come in on their hands has been super helpful this year. It kind of keeps them honest at the plate, so they can't just sit sinker. So yeah, and obviously definitely strength is lefties in general. Just the way I throw and the way my pitches move, they tend to have a very tough time. So
we have a little shout out from Kevin in Bandcamp. He had to sneak out Bandcamp just to comment this.
Who are the big three? What big three is he talking about? Two other members of the big
Yes, I'm
three.
definitely part of the big three for sure.
Man. Oh.
Two members of the big three.
I don't know who.
I think that's you and me, Isaac.
Oh yeah, and Kevin, I guess, is calling himself part of the big three. All right.
Oh, he just finished Bandcamp, so he didn't sneak out. But with that, we'll go into what we're here to talk about here tonight. The prediction, or excuse me, series preview between the Tampa Bay Rays and the Miami Marlins. Citrus series playing here in Miami. Should be a pretty decent crowd, at least, for these two teams here in Florida. What are you guys expecting from this series? If you could call it a series, it's only 2 games, not 3. What are you guys expecting, and especially coming in from the Rays? So what can you guys tell us about these Tampa Bay Rays?
Well, you need to start with Harold Ramirez, of course.
I know it. That's the first person I saw.
Stripes Joe, and I have my own biases towards him. He's back and healthy. He missed a chunk in the middle of the year due to, I think, a fractured thumb. But before that, after that, he's now their like almost everyday cleanup hitter. In fact, hitting cleanup tonight, as we'll show in just a moment. So it's excited to see him back. Obviously, he played against them earlier this year in Tampa Bay, and he hit home runs in both of those games of that mini series as well. So that set a pretty high bar for what he's going to do. But it's nice to see him back. It is, of course, a little painful to see somebody hitting as well as he is, who the team essentially got rid of for nothing. I think it was a waiver claim when they lost him to what was the Guardians at the time. And then he bounced around since then. So to see somebody that they had team control over for several years and who was well-liked and seemed to fit a pretty decent niche as somebody that just had very good hitting fundamentals, and now he's with the Rays, and he's been a pretty critical part of their hot streak lately. That stings a little bit, but so he'll be in town, and he's one of the hotter hitters in their lineup. I think I could double check. They have a few guys that are kind of carrying the team right now. They've had an inconsistent year offensively themselves, despite how well the team is playing overall. So it's really been just a few guys on and off for them that have been carrying the freight for the team. But the Rays are kind of where a lot of people thought they would be, where they're not quite as dominant as last year, but they're still in a very good spot to make the playoffs. So these games are very important for them.
Yeah, and I think probably one of the bigger aspects of this team is pitching wise. Is tonight we're probably going to see another, maybe the front runner now for the AL. Justin Verlander was just put IL. What can you guys tell us about Mr. Shane McClanahan and the Tampa Bay Rays? What can we expect from him? What do you think? He's having a really good year. I believe it's a 2.20 ERA, almost 150 pitches, innings pitched. Excuse me. Just what do you guys see from Shane McClanahan? What do the Marlins have to do to stop him?
I don't think there is any stopping Shane McClanahan. If it wasn't for Verlander, I think this guy would be my Cy Young pick. And there's just so few weaknesses about Shane McClanahan. The only thing I can really think about is that his fastball isn't like the moviest pitch ever. Doesn't have the most horizontal movement. But like literally just like he's just an elite pitcher, and he is a future ace of that Tampa Bay Rays rotation. And he is just like, with him, like striking out 12 guys per 9 and potentially just like he's just not like allowing any runs or like putting any guys on base either. He's just been absolutely fantastic. And, potentially now with Verlander going down, I think McClanahan might be my pick for AL Cy Young. But he's just been fantastic. Like, there really is no stopping, and it's really just going to see and just kind of like roulette and see what we can do against Shane McClanahan and the Rays. But
It's a lot of red.
Yep.
That's him.
Right there. You see, and you can see his fastball spin is in the 45 percentile. That makes sense, given like his movement isn't the greatest. But
that's a pretty frightening graphic for the fish. You consider how awful our hitting is. My goodness, this is. I've watched a lot of McClanahan starts. I agree with everything that's been said. He's just sensational. But this is also a matchup between a team that's extremely advanced in analytics, and the Marlins are just not. And I think we actually see that in terms of how well they develop players at the big league level. How the Marlins still have not mastered player development, particularly hitters, position players, either at the minors or the majors. And they always seem to take advantage of our weaknesses. That's just what they do as an organization.
Yeah, I am a little curious to see how Miami fares against this guy. We all know about their struggles against left-handed pitching, but they haven't really faced a lefty quite like Shane, who has just incredible velocity from the left side of the mound. They did face Rodon in the second game of the season, so you don't really want to compare that to this. But we all know how they do against soft tossing lefties. But I'm a little bit more optimistic that they might score a run or two off Shane. I don't think they're going to blow him out of the game by the fifth inning, but I am curious to see how they fare against this type of left-handed pitcher.
Well, I need to correct you. They did face him during that series earlier in the year. Right. I remember pretty vividly. It was Pablo versus Shane McClanahan, and both of their numbers, they were kind of in the same tier of performance up to that point in the season. And McClanahan went 6 scoreless innings in that game, and it was pretty great. 6 scoreless innings. He struck out 9. A lot of different names there than he'll see tonight, especially that entire bottom part of the lineup is different. Even Joey Wendell was hurt during that series. So it's different names. I don't know if they're necessarily better competition for him, but it's different guys than the ones that he held scoreless a few months ago.
Yeah, now we have our lineups. Now we have the lineups between Tampa Bay Rays, Miami Marlins. For you guys, what sticks out to you? First, let's start off on the side of Tampa Bay. Ron, looking at this Tampa Bay lineup, is there a certain name? Is there a certain stat that you're looking at that really stands out to you?
I think in general, this has been one of the more impressive Tampa seasons, just collectively, because it is true historically that they're not known for having necessarily star players. But one player, Wander Franco, who projected as a star player, has of course been hurt. They've had to rely on Harold Ramirez. I know Eli's the biggest Harold fan on the planet. I'm probably a close second. I think it's terrific to see what he's doing. But every time I watch them, I'm struck by Yandy Diaz and how much of a fun player he is to watch, and how exciting he is, just in terms of his theatrics, bat to ball skills, a variety of different things about him. But again, there's no one offensively that just really stands out with Tampa. But and they've had some pitching injuries as well as some offensive injuries, but they're still hanging tough. They've still been able to do what they need to do, stay in it, and they're doing the typical Rays thing.
Yeah, and with Tampa, like their biggest strength is they got their $70 million payroll, but their biggest ability is that they know how to deploy their exact guys in their exact situations, and in no other situation any other than those. And they when they need to get a guy out who, for example, they will know who they will throw out a guy out there who is a main slider curveball guy against a hitter who is prone to chasing, versus someone who is going to be swinging more in through contact. And the way that the Rays are able to analyze that and know which specific matchup is best for each individual hitter and to only get those guys in there, you're maximizing each player's individual potential in that situation. You're only going to, on average, whenever you run that simulation over and over and over again, you're going to get the best possible outcome usually for that pitcher. And that's what makes them so successful. They're just ridiculously good at knowing what to do at the right moments. And it just shows why Kevin Cash, in my opinion, should be the manager of the year almost every single year. But like obviously you can't do that.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, Tampa, in my opinion, is the with what they do, how much they do with so little. They should be like organization of the year in all professional sports.
Yeah, as Gabriel was asking about their payroll as a team, entering this year, it was slightly lower than the Marlins for this year. It was a shade under $80 million. Now it's poised to probably increase over the coming years. They, fingers crossed, they think they'll have that new ballpark eventually put together later this decade. They've already signed Wander Franco to that large backloaded deal. And even recently, Tyler Glasnow.
Yeah,
they're poised to pay him $25 million in 2024, which is the kind of salary they have never committed to an individual player in a single season before. So let's, assuming that they do hold on to him and don't trade him at the last minute, that was a very interesting move. And the timing of that, as he's coming back from Tommy John surgery, was pretty fascinating. They are, as Adam said, they are extremely efficient with what they have and what they're allowed to spend from ownership. Even in years like this, where they have been, even more so than the Marlins, they've been wrecked by injuries to very key players, including Franco and including Tyler Glasnow, among many others, especially on really both sides of the ball. So many critical players have been missing for them, and yet they are still, as we said, a very good team and one that still has aspirations of playing in October, just because the players that they do have, they either come out of nowhere to be productive or they start off being very interesting and then just continue to get better. As Shane McClanahan, he was very interesting last year as a rookie. He's a good rookie, and then he took a huge leap forward this year into being a Cy Young frontrunner. And then on Wednesday, tomorrow, second game, it's Drew Rasmussen, and I don't think many people batted an eye when they traded to acquire Drew Rasmussen, and he, on an inning-per-inning basis this year, has been almost as good as McClanahan has been. They are really astounding, this organization. And I think it should be mentioned that the Citrus series has been very one-sided, unsurprisingly, the last few years. If the Rays win even one game in the series, that means they once again win the Citrus series for the fourth straight year. They won it in 2019, 2020, 2021, and they won the previous two games against these teams this year. So all they need is a split of this one in order to once again have the edge over the Marlins, unsurprisingly.
Yeah, and going back to the Marlins and who's pitching against Shane McClanahan, that would be Jesus Luzardo. What do you guys see from Luzardo going up now against the Rays, having to face off against Shane McClanahan, having just a really good outing last time, going 7 innings against it was Oakland, but still 7 innings, and before that 6 innings, a 1-earned run against the Dodgers. So what do you expect from Mr. Luzardo tonight against these Rays?
Well, we'll see.
Anyone.
I'm pretty optimistic about what we've seen since he's come back from injury. I mean, the main difference we talked about is the changeup and how he's using it more and getting more results with it than he's had before, and it just makes him a more complete pitcher. Whereas entering this year, he was an exciting 2-pitch guy with his, really 3 pitches, with his 4-seamer and his sinker and his breaking ball. And now this just adds another element to it that I'm excited to see him put to the test. Again, this lineup is pretty dangerous, and as we I'll take another look at it as to who he's facing. Yeah, didn't worry too much. Oh, yeah, I should say that they did go pretty heavy on the righties in this matchup, but that's where the changeup comes in. So I expect him to throw it just as much as he has in his recent outings against all these righty batters in the situation where they used a lot of relievers yesterday, but they still have. There's not a huge amount of pressure for him to go deep into this game. It's more so just about, keeping runs off the board, as he's just trying to solidify his spot in this rotation moving forward. And for the most part, this last month has really helped his case.
He's been an incredible fun pitcher to watch. Our starting pitching is just really fun to watch. Luzardo has had a lot better command and control when you compare his outings to last season. And you consider the arsenal that he has. When he has the command and control, he can be really special. And there's no question he has top of the rotation potential, and he's been flashing some of that. I thought it was especially impressive, his start against the Dodgers.
Yeah. And then also for that second game, it looks like we might see the return of Mr. Trevor Rogers, who had a lengthy stint in the rehab assignment there. It was really up and down for Trevor. Really started off pretty slow, but then ended off really strong with AAA Jacksonville. So again, anyone in the panel who wants to talk about it, just what do you guys expect or want to see from Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, with Trevor, I mean, we just want to see him just throw strikes. He struggled with his control earlier on this year. He was walking a lot of batters, and when he was throwing strikes, he was allowing a lot of home runs. So it wasn't like when he was throwing strikes, it was like a lot of balls straight in the plate. There weren't a lot of movements, and it was very easy to detect and be able to crush from opposing batters. So I think, Trevor really kind of corrected that with his last AAA start. Although I will say, for the majority of his rehab stints, he wasn't sharp. So I'm not fully convinced yet, although I've had said it before that long term I'm not worried about Trevor, and I don't think I am either, at all still, but one start isn't gonna change anything either. But I think Trevor will be fine long term, but I think what you really want to be able to see him do is just have command of his pitches. And that's something that coming up as a prospect, that was one of the best things that he displayed, was that he was always a strike thrower and as a guy who could put his pitches and locate them wherever he needs them to. And guys haven't been able to really catch up to it. But except for now, it's kind of caught up to him this year. He's been diagnosed with a pretty bad case of the yips, and I think one minor league, stint in the minor leagues to kind of correct that and see what they can do. I think is going to be very fruitful for him, and I hope we can really turn it around because he's a very, very talented pitcher. And if he can come back and emulate any sort of ability that he had last year, Miami is going to have a top 5, maybe better rotation in baseball if they don't already. So. Especially with Eddie coming back, being better than next year, and Pablo, and you've got your Cy Young frontrunner right now with Alcantara, but with especially seeing Trevor blocking down that lefty spot and being another weapon that Mattingly or whoever's going to be at the helm next year can use, is going to be something really fun to watch. And I think I'm very, very fond of Trevor, and I think he can do really well, and I'm excited to see what he can bring to the table coming from for the rest of the year.
Yeah, like Adam said, along with the command, to me, I'm going to be looking at the velocity. See, obviously, I think he's going to come out, throwing pretty hard. But to me, it's him maintaining the velocity deep into his starts, because that's where we've seen him struggle, get that second, even third time through the lineup. The velocity starts dipping to 91, 92, and then, the opposition starts to hit it pretty hard. So, like Adam said, the home runs, the command, and just maintaining that velocity deep into ball games is the main key for him. I'll be at the ballpark tomorrow night, so I'll have a good set of eyes on him.
Yeah. Is there anything anyone wants to mention before we get into our prediction time? Any topics, concerns, anything about Marlins this upcoming series that really something you want to get off your chest?
Well, one thing that I was just thinking about earlier today is how similar their record-wise is tracking towards last year. And this is something where I've been stubborn about how I felt they were definitely improved from last year, in that even with the injuries, that when they called up young guys, that those guys would fill in adequately enough that you would see some sort of significant step forward. At this point, 128 games into the year, they are only 3 games ahead of where they were at this time last year. It continues to frustrate me and confuse me, considering the schedule that they still have to play. I mean, they got the Dodgers games out of the way, but with the Rays in this series, with a lot of NL East games coming up against the Mets and the Braves and the Phillies, I can't believe it's still within the realm of possibility that they could finish in record-wise in the same neighborhood that they did last year, despite everything, despite calling up all these pretty good prospects and despite spending money to address or trying to address deficiencies that they had. I hope they prove me wrong. Well, I hope they prove me right. And I hope that there's some sort of positive momentum as we get to this final month plus of the season, because instead it's been kind of the opposite, where August has been right down there with, I think it was the month of May. That was also pretty bad for this team, where there's not a whole lot of, it's difficult to pick out the positives with the exception of the starting rotation. And I hope more of those positives kind of show themselves down the stretch.
Yeah. And with that, we'll jump into the best part of the stream.
This is prediction time.
It's time.
My new video. Yeah.
A nice little video for prediction time. So for those of you who may be new here in prediction, we like to give our prediction for the series and the MVP. It can either be from either team, could be offensively or a pitcher. We'll start off with Mr. Isaac. as we look at here on predictions, it is a three-way, close, almost a tie there, a three-way race right there between Eli, myself, and Kevin. And then we have Isaac cutting down Kevin, and then it's Alex, Noah, Lewis, Grant, Gabriel, and Bella rounding it out. So Isaac, getting close there to Kevin. Give me your prediction. Oh, you're muted.
Had a bad prediction last series. Thought that they would split at least, or maybe Sandy would win MVP. Why would I not pick the American League MVP to win it? For this one, I'm not gonna be optimistic. I'm saying they lose both. You're facing two very good pitchers, and you got Luzardo, you got Trevor, but you don't really know exactly what you're gonna get from either of them. So 0-2, and I'll give the MVP, like everyone, to Shane McClanahan.
All right, look who joined us, Mr. Kevin from band practice. Tell us your prediction on this series, Kev. Right on time.
What's up, guys? What's up, Ron, Alex, everyone here? Marlins split, and Shane McClanahan is the MVP. It's kind of hard to go against Shane McClanahan, so that's the prediction.
All right. We'll go to Adam.
Right. So I'm going to go – this is going to be tough because everyone's going to pick McClanahan. But I'm going to also go Shane McClanahan as my MVP. I'm going to say the Marlins lose both games. So I'm going to say 0-2 and McClanahan is my MVP.
All right. Alex Carver, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. It's going to be tough against these two guys for sure. And I mean, you hope you get the Trevor in AAA, but who knows? His velo, you guys were talking about his velo through starts, and you're right that was a problem. But through that last start play, it was really good the whole way through, and the slider looked great in that game. So did the changeup. Like everything worked that day. Hopefully that happens again for him. Really quick, I'm going to say they lose both, and I'm going to give it to Harold Ramirez because why not? So there you go. Marlins lose both. Harold Ramirez.
All right, Eli.
He took the words right out of my mouth. It's going to be a Rays sweep. MVP Harold Ramirez. I don't say that to fall on my bias. I fall on the fact that the Marlins are going to be starting two lefties in this series. So he's definitely going to be – he's starting cleanup tonight. He's starting cleanup tomorrow night. That's one thing he does especially well is he's going to rake against his lefties, and he's not much more to say. He's going to be the key to this series, and I'm proud of him. Very proud of Harold and what he's become.
Ron, your MVP and your series prediction. Let's hear it.
I'll be a little bit different with the MVP selection. I'm going to go with Drew Rasmussen because of a lot that Eli's already talked about. He's been really just as effective as McClanahan. He's a pitcher that the Marlins – the type of pitcher that the Marlins have trouble with, but who don't they have trouble with, and especially against lefties. I wish I could be more optimistic about how the series will end, but like a lot of other people, I'm picking Tampa to win both.
All right. Let me give some of the predictions for those who aren't here. Hector says series split, and he has Shane McClanahan MVP. Lewis has, I believe, Rays sweep, and Drew Rasmussen as his MVP.
And I have one from Noah as well.
For Noah, yes.
He has it as a series split with Joey Wendell as an MVP. Remember, he's facing his former team after not getting the opportunity to do so earlier this year.
Cool. All right. And I think I'm going to go with everyone else. I'm going to go. Let's go. I'm going to go race sweep, Shane McClanahan MVP. I think the Rays are just too dominant right now. I think Shane McClanahan is just going to shove the Marlins tonight. Drew Rasmussen's also going to have a really great series, game tomorrow. But that does it for us here. Kevin, you just joined us for like 2 seconds. Anything you wanted to talk about? There's still time before the game starts.
Tampa's really good. There's not much more to say. Yandy has been on fire. That's about it. It's a really good team. And I hope Luzardo can go deep into this game and dominate this team, to be honest with you. This would be a great start for him and see what he can do.
What do you think of Trevor? How do you think Trevor's going to do in a game back against the Rays?
I don't know. We'll see. I hope he does that AAA stuff he did in his last start. If not, we have issues.
All right. You heard it there from Kev. That's going to do it for us here. Go watch this series. For Daniel, for Isaac, Eli, Kevin, Alex, Adam, for Professor Ron Cox, this has been Fish Stripes Live. And do remember this, always go fish.
We got to end it off right. We got to